It's day 12 of designing an Animal Crossing island in 30 days using only DIYs. Yesterday, we spent the entire day moving every single villager to a new permanent location. It did take forever, but it was a crucial step.
It's the 30-day DIY island.
Now that the majority of our houses have been placed in their new permanent locations, we need to figure out the placement of more buildings today. In addition to that, I would like to continue working on the various paths and things like that around the island. I don't have a lot of money right now, so I can't be putting in staircases everywhere, but getting the paths down and determining more parts of the island layout is something we can do for free and will be very, very crucial for getting this island to 5 stars. There's a lot of life here around the town today. Eric was just taking a nap on one of these hay beds. We have conversations going. There's just people kind of walking around everywhere. I feel like the villagers are really pleased that they finally have homes in a location that's not going to change for once, which is probably pretty good. They were all on the beaches before, and, you know, sometimes the tide rises, their carpets get dirty. That upsets them. I get it. So I'm happy to have done that for them. We have 2 more houses where we need to figure out where those go. And we have 4 different buildings that also need homes that are not houses. The museum, Nooks, Able Sisters, and the campsite. Also, our beach DIY today is the log bed, which is one I was wanting to get for a while. This is a really nice item for all kinds of purposes, so that's great. So I'm not going to waste any more time, and I'm going to begin placing down paths, finishing up paths that were just kind of, you know, hollow for no reason, and really working through the rest of this island layout. With our paths filled in, the next thing we need to do is start to place down our grid. When I build symmetrically, I like to make things in a bit of a grid style so that all the paths connect in a really nice way, and it's just kind of easy to navigate around the island, no matter how much you clutter it at the end of the day. For me, one of the focal points in this type of city design, if you will, is going to be the immovable objects. In this case, resident services. The idea being is we want paths going to and from resident services because we can't do anything about this building. So what I'm going to do is just have a 4 wide path. We'll start with 4. We'll just kind of try to keep these paths wide for as long as we can. I'm going to have that come off into this direction. And we are actually going to turn it straight up towards the bridge up north, which is going to create our first little spot that we can kind of choose how we decorate. So kind of like this. And by spot we get to decorate, I mean this area right here. In this spot, we could put all kinds of little things, a little garden, you know, a little seating area, maybe some maybe there's a music player, a little campfire. There's all kinds of things you could put in little spaces like this. And this is why I love doing kind of symmetrical builds in this game so much, because I like decorating little areas. When you give me one giant blank canvas, I start to get intimidated. I think a lot of people could relate to that. And this is kind of my way of combating that. Now, alternatively, depending on its size, we could also put a building here. I'm thinking maybe Able Sisters. If we did this, my thought process is that you would have Able Sisters here, you would have Nook's Cranny right across this little road from it, so right here, and the path itself would continue running in this direction until you got to about here, where, you know, you'd have the option to go up that staircase, so on and so forth. We do need to take some measurements though. This is 4 tiles deep right here. We get kind of a 5th tile if you consider where I'm walking right now to be part of where a building could go, because you can always slide the path under the doorstep of these buildings. So I think Able Sisters could actually fit in here perfectly while leaving a little bit of room right here to put, I don't know, something, a couple trees, just something to separate this path from this path. This is a page I found online about the different dimensions of buildings in Animal Crossing, and you can see here that Able Sisters is 5 by 4. So we got 5 long here by 4 deep. So if we allow Able Sisters and the doorstep to kind of hit the path here, this is what it would look like, which is kind of perfect, actually. I say this is perfect because I have a gap behind Able Sisters and we have a gap behind Resident Services. The difference is that I could put a tree behind Resident Services. I can't put any trees behind Able Sisters because that'll be right up against a building. I think I'd rather have the space, though, than not have the space behind it. You can still put some maybe little items back there. So I do think I'm going to go with this strategy of putting it right up against the path. And now it's time to ask Tom Nook about that. This does, of course, mean we have to smash another rock. You just never know where they're going to end up. So if we imagine it right here, that is what we're looking at. And I pretty much like this. I think this is a good spot for it. I like that it's right up against the paths. And I think if I put nooks across the way, it's going to feel like a nice city kind of vibe. Of course, we can replace the stone path underneath the front once the building comes in, but yes, that is how it's going to look. And now, Nook's Cranny, I think, could go right here. Before I do that, though, let's continue to build our paths, and I want to take this path and bring it all the way over to the other paths we have along the river. So this path, the top of it, is not going to perfectly intersect this one, but I think that's going to be okay in this case because the staircase will be here and there'll be a staircase here. And I was thinking because of all that activity, I'd probably put some stone path just connecting from like sort of an angle anyway. So people might not really notice that these didn't line up perfectly. I think it's all right that they didn't. It's kind of too late for me to change anything now though. So we'll just have to work with it. It looks like I messed up the placement of the bottom part of this path anyway, so that's just making things even more confusing. So now this is the new location for Nook's Cranny. Again, right next to Able Sisters. I think this is going to make things feel pretty nice over here with the nice big paths. I'm looking very forward to kind of decorating this area. One of the buildings I forgot to mention today was my house. I need to figure out where that is going to go as well. I'm not exactly sure yet. I have a couple of ideas, but we also need to figure out the placement of the museum and then potentially the campsite. But I'm up here because I think the campsite might go back behind these houses, just right up on that cliff over there, once we kind of get this area figured out. I'm going to get rid of the pond and then the river and waterfall that run from here to here, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And then I think I'm going to put the campsite up there. That'll give me like a nice area to decorate the campsite without making it too big, you know, or too small. I think it's going to be just the right size. As for getting rid of another naturally occurring pond and river, this is because the area where the staircases are going to go to get up to like the cliffs, where the two staircases intersect, you know, that's going to be tough. Doing that and having water flowing down is going to be really, really tough. So I decided that this is going to be the water source that probably has to go. And then what I can do is take the other water source and maybe work off of that. Maybe keep some of the natural terrain a little bit and use it to our advantage. So here's where our staircase would be, and then I think you would walk up here, and I think the campsite should go maybe around this area. So you'd have maybe like a little dirt path that kind of goes up and over to the campsite, which would leave us a bunch of room over here and a bunch of room right here. And maybe in the future, we could put like a little waterfall or something or some more cliffs. But yeah, for now, I think that'll be pretty good. So yeah, I think right about there, it looks like that would be in line with this home here, which is fine. And plenty of room for a little bit of decorating. I'm excited. Real quick, I will say, this is one of the most unique naturally forming rivers I've ever had. I really like this little partial island that juts out. And it's just a cool spot, and it's a shame to have to get rid of it, but I do have to get rid of it. If I was doing a no terraforming island, this would have been a really ideal island for that, but I never went into this with the intention of doing a no terraforming run, so I thought about it, but yeah, ultimately I wanted to make this my own. So I wish Animal Crossing had the ability for you to maybe put in a seed. A lot of games that have like randomly spawning maps and stuff have like a unique seed number, and you can use that to always have that exact layout. Animal Crossing doesn't quite work like that, and it's a shame. All right, that part of the river is now gone, and then we just have this river left in terms of all of our naturally spawning rivers. This area right here is probably where I'm going to have some water going over to here and then into these two waterfalls. So I will bring that river down and it'll connect here, and then it'll probably split off in some point and then connect here as well, which means this path will probably feature a bridge that goes straight ahead and you walk up here to something. I don't know. Maybe this is where the museum goes. You know what? This is actually a ton of space. Like if the path were to become 4 tiles wide again and go in this direction, and you just went up a little bit, you could create a pretty interesting museum entrance with the museum all the way back here. And then, you know, plenty of room between the staircase and the path to decorate. And then the villagers could take a very short walk over to that museum. What's also interesting is that the secret beach isn't too far away. I thought it was right there. It's actually over here. So we could terraform a little bit and have a path that goes from the front of the museum over to the right, and then like maybe down a staircase and over to the secret beach. I've always liked putting Red's secret beach next to the museum when possible, because it gives you the ability to very quickly take art from him and bring it, or go into the museum. You can't bring it there straight away, but you go into the museum and you see what pieces you already have. So it's kind of nice having those two things close together. I don't know. I got to think about that. It's a little bit of a weird jump to go from the front of the museum all the way over to here, especially if I'm considering keeping this naturally spawning cliff with the pond on it. But, there's probably a way to do that. Maybe through some, like, different terraforming we do. It's a really thin, narrow passageway from the museum over to here. I don't know. It could be pretty cool, though. Now that I'm seeing this like this, this is an option. There's, of course, a lot more map to consider here. We have two houses which don't currently have any plans in terms of where they're going to go. We have my house and now the museum, which we might have figured out a spot for, maybe. For now, I'm going to get rid of a little more river, and I'm going to entertain this idea. I'm going to put down a big rectangle that represents the museum, and I'm just going to continue laying out the island. And as time goes on, I'll see if this spot makes sense for it. There is one small hiccup with this plan, and that is, of course, that the museum entrance is an uneven number, and our 4 wide paths are 4 wide, so that's an even number. So I'm not exactly sure if I could go straight from this staircase up and into the museum. We would have to find an excuse for the path to narrow to 3 tiles wide, and it would need to look somewhat natural and make sense. One thing that could definitely work in our favor, though, is the fact that this path is already 3 tiles wide and can't get any wider, so I could extend this path and have it turn and go north. I've decided to play around with this concept a little bit, so this is kind of what it would look like. Villagers would be able to go up here, turn, and the museum will be about right here. I'd leave enough space to maybe put a couple trees or something behind it, but yeah, that's the idea. And then if you go straight down from this path, you kind of naturally run into where this staircase area is going to be. So at this stage, I think what would really help me is to know exactly the relationship between the 2 waterfalls and the potential river that's going to run to kind of fuel these waterfalls. The problem with this is we're truly talking about a lot of water here. And I mean, a bridge essentially has to be placed down so people can cross over and get to here. And then you still have to figure out how the path goes from an even number to an odd number. This is always the challenge with my symmetrical designs and the museum and my house. Of course, my house is also an odd number for the entrance. This is really, really tough. It does just so happen that the way I designed that path up there, it does kind of line up with this path here. So you can kind of imagine a staircase, that's too wide and it comes up here. And, your eye is a bit tricked because there's another staircase and another path coming right up here. So you're not expecting this to kind of go straight ahead. And then what I could do instead of a bridge, what if I had a pond that went from over here, perhaps, down to this waterfall? So it's 2 separate water sources still. One of them is just really ridiculously close to a waterfall, and one of them is really ridiculously far away, and it'll just kind of come down here. Is it the perfect solution? No. But this does allow me to have a museum entrance that does line up with a path, and it still allows most of my paths across my entire island to be 4 tiles wide. I think this is probably, if we want the museum up here, as good as we're going to get in terms of solutions for keeping things somewhat coherent, somewhat symmetrical. And yes, I know I'm using the word symmetrical kind of wrong. I'm just hoping you know what I mean, because the alternative would be a lot of winding paths and cliffs and things like that. That's not what we're doing. We're going for a more straightforward kind of aesthetic here. So that is where the museum would theoretically sit. Plenty of room between this path and the entrance for me to decorate a little bit, and plenty of room behind it so we can put maybe a couple different types of trees or something in the back. Meanwhile, that path I was talking about that could go to the secret beach could extend right off of here and then go around this way. Or we could have like maybe a little dirt path that just kind of is hidden or obscured a little bit by some trees, and you're like, well, what's down here? And it is deliberately kind of like masked because it's the secret beat. Still a bunch to figure out, but I think we've decided on our museum placement. So with Nooks, Abel's, the museum, and the campsite all figured out, that just leaves me and my house. Oh, and of course Stinky and Eric, but you know, we'll worry about them later. I'm thinking I would like my house here, here in this spot. This is of course going to require a bit of cliff editing, because what I'm thinking of doing is putting my house up on this tier that I'm standing on, but having the property itself be kind of big. Somewhere along this river will be a bridge, and it'll lead to a path that goes this way. And then as you walk, you'll realize you are at my place. It'll be fenced in. I'm thinking of having some farms in front of it, similar to how I did it kind of in CanyonDuck, which was a previous island I did. And then there'll be a path going up, centered with my house, and it'll lead you right to the front door. In order to carry on this part of the layout, I'm going to need to go to the museum, dump my fossils, sell a couple extra things I have. We just need to clean up our inventory a bit, and I need to find some food. I have a lot of fossils on me, and only 3 of them are being donated. That's a bit disappointing, but I guess that just means I'll have to keep the money instead. It's been a while since I've stored my materials, and my goodness, I have a lot of stuff. This is this is really exciting because, again, we're crafting everything we place on this island, and it needs to be 5 stars. So it feels pretty good to be building up our stockpile in this way. Anyway, I'm going to grab some cherries, chomp them up, stem and all, and I'm going to start picking up trees just to get them the heck out of my way. And with the trees gone, it's time to do some cliff editing. We need to make enough room for my house, and also I want to leave some cliff behind it too. I might want to put something up there. I'm not sure. Maybe a pond, maybe a bunch of trees. But yeah, I am going to walk this back a bit, and we're going to use the extra space to, you know, have the house down and decorate a little bit in front of it. But the big area in front of the house is actually going to be on the lower tier. We're going to have 2 staircases coming up to this thing, and we're going to decorate a nice big farm. I might even put a fountain out there. I'm feeling fancy. What I've done here is extended the cliff out just a little bit, and then I've walked this one back quite a bit. And so my house is going to be somewhere up here. I kind of need to figure out the paths, but I don't want to lay too much down as well, because I still haven't even figured out where the bridge over that river over there is going to go. And that's going to determine a few things as well. So I'm kind of running into a point where I'm getting a bit confused, a bit stuck. Maybe this balloon will cheer me up. Oh yeah, it's money. Free money, I'll take that. So I'm thinking this tile here roughly represents like the middle of like this kind of cliff area, and therefore the middle of my house. Maybe it should go actually over here-ish. Maybe that should be the middle of my house. I need space on either side. Okay, we'll split the difference. That's the middle of my house. Okay, so tentatively, this is where my house is going to go. I've started to extend this cliff out as well, just to get some cliff behind it over on this side. We could do whatever we want with the cliffs later on. I could naturalize them a bit. Maybe I get rid of that. I don't know. We'll just kind of see. But once we know where the door is, which is, you know, we think we figured that out, we're going to now plan our 2 staircases. I'm thinking one over here and one over here. It'll look kind of like this, but what I have to decide is, do I want to make big indents here for the staircases, putting them very close to my house, or do I want to extend the cliff out a bit to kind of bury the staircases in the cliffs while not keeping them too close to my house? If I extend the cliff out to here, we get, I would say, still a pretty decent amount of space in front of our house, of our property, I should say, for farming and things like that. It's not as much as I was imagining, but it's also not that bad. And there's still plenty of different opportunities to put paths going from that side of the river over to here. Another balloon, what is it? A garbage pail. I usually joke about the balloons being garbage, but now the game's just messing with me. It is literally giving me garbage. So I think for the time being, this is my house planned out. We know the cliff is going to extend a bit more. We know where the staircases are going to go. And we know we're going to have like a cool looking property for maybe planting some crops and stuff. It'll be a pretty cool walk-up. There'll be 2 walk-ups. There'll be one here, there'll be one here, and there'll be something cool in the middle. And yeah, maybe on the sides we put something. I don't know. I want a farm out here. Alternatively, if there's not enough room for a nice big farm, I could put one above my house on the cliffs behind it. So a lot of options, but I wanted to give myself a big, ridiculous amount of room for my house. And I think I've done that. That, of course, leaves Stinky and Eric, and they need a place to live. So in this section of the map, kind of where I'm standing, as you can see, there is a lot of room. So a lot of this stuff, especially like the flower garden, probably ends up going away in the future. And you could see a situation where we put their houses down here and just kind of make cool little entrances and yards for them, and that could work pretty well. Alternatively, right next to our village or neighborhood, there is that nice, cool, flat-looking area where we have our junkyard at the moment. We could put one or both of their houses out here. I think it is a decision that I am going to sleep on. There's no rush for getting their house placed down. Iron armor. That is another outfit for us. Look at that. Last time we got like the golden suit of armor, this one, but we can't wear it. So getting the wearable iron armor is pretty cool, and it's not super expensive too. Maybe we'll make this sometime. Anyway, we're almost there. We got most of the island laid out. Almost every building has a spot now, and we're gonna figure out the rest of it in this video right here, or if it's ready, there'll be a video right there. Then you can click on it and see what happens.